So welcome everybody. I'm Carol Gripnow. I'm working for HIVOS, Humanistic Institute for International Development. I'm going to facilitate this session. Well, this is a session, it's a part of a series of provocative seminars we've had over the last 1.5 years. And that's part of a knowledge program we're running together with the International Institute for Environment and Development of the UK. The knowledge program is called Smallholder Agency in a Globalized Market. The idea with this knowledge program was to influence policies and practices affecting smallholders, and mainly by bringing in new insights and perspectives. And the series of provocations were meant to highlight a number of issues we felt were lacking in the overall debate on smallholders and globalized markets. The reports of the previous provocations you can find on the websites of both IIED and HIVOS. And there are reports also outside the door which have been produced by this knowledge program. So now about this seminar. This seminar will focus on rural youth. The rural youth of today, will they be the farmers of tomorrow? I think it's a very fascinating question. I think all of us recognize that increasingly we see youth turning their back on small-scale agriculture. We see outflow of youth from rural areas to urban areas. Partly due to limited access to markets, assets, finance, infrastructure and so on in rural areas to create attractive options for them. But it's also related to the perceived employment opportunities in urban areas. At the same time, we recognize that in many regions there are also limited employment opportunities outside agriculture. And what is being recognized increasingly is that small-scale agriculture remains a key source for livelihood and employment for many youth. What will we do during this seminar? Well, first of all, we're going to explore the trends and transformations taking place. Are we sufficiently understanding what's happening in rural areas in different parts of the world? And also, what is the role of small-scale farming in providing livelihoods and employment opportunities for everybody, but especially for rural youth? So we will have 2 guests which will present their insights, their findings. One is Felicity Proctor, welcome from the UK. She will start presenting global overview. And the second speaker is Xiaobing Wang from China, and she will present findings from China's transformation and especially the role of small-scale agriculture. After that, we will have an open discussion debate where I would really like to invite all of you to bring in your insights and share that as well, so that we have a better idea of what are the trends and developments actually taking place and the role of small agriculture and in particular youth. Then we'll have a short break. After that break, we will have another 2 guests who will talk about the aspirations and attitudes of rural youth to small-scale agriculture. One guest is Philippe Remy. He's sitting over there. He will join us later here. He's from IFAD, Italy. And George Fernandez, he's from the International Movement of Catholic Agriculture and Rural Youth. You're over there, so welcome. They will also share their insights with all of you, and again, we will have an open discussion debate, and again, you are really invited to bring in your own perspectives and views. And of course, also our live stream participants are very much invited to join this debate and bring in their views as well. Then the overall question of this debate is also, of course, about if we are clear on the trends and transformations taking place and we understand maybe better the aspirations of youth, what does it tell us for policies and practices, and what are the consequences for institutions supporting small-scale farmers? So these are the key questions which will be addressed during this seminar. So as I mentioned, we will have a first round where we will discuss the trends, transformations taking place in the role of small-scale agriculture. After that, there will be a short break, and after that, we'll continue with the second round, which is really looking at the aspirations of youth. And at the end, I will invite Bill Vorley of the International Institute for Environment and Development to come up with some concluding remarks. And we hope to finish this seminar at around 12 o'clock. So, as I mentioned, Felicity Proctor will do the first presentation. Felicity, just as an introduction, you've worked in international development throughout your career, including with bilateral and multilateral agencies of the UK Department for International Development, DFID, and the World Bank, but also with internationally recognized academic and policy centers in both developed and developing countries. You started your consulting company in 2007, and during your career you focused on rural and agriculture diversification, in particular horticulture. You have extensive experience in developing country agriculture and rural development strategies and policy formulation. And while you don't have a focus on youth per se, through your various assignments, including, for instance, your role in the Regoverning Markets program, you were involved in work looking at the future for rural development and agriculture. And of course, that also includes a perspective on youth. So Felicity, I would like to invite you to give your presentation.
Okay, well, good morning, everybody. Welcome, everybody in the group today, and of course, those are on the web stream. I'd like just to talk now, to present the introduction, some of the bigger picture context of changes in rural transformation and in agriculture, and begin by saying that any debate on youth, and that includes rural and urban youth, and their future in farming, must be set within the context of demographic change in a given country or region, and the prevailing agrarian structure, and the nature of rural transformation, including economic diversification, industrialization, and the pace of urbanization. And the question is that rural youth may aspire to a future outside of agriculture, but I would ask the question whether the reality is indeed different. And then the next question is whether small-scale agriculture can be a viable and attractive employment opportunity for youth, in particular those with high levels of a young population. So let us begin by looking at some of the figures. And the big picture figures are, as we know, an expectation that by 2050, the world's population will rise to some 9.3 billion compared to the around 7 billion today, with very different trends in different regions of the world. And the global demand for food is set to increase by some 70%, again, with very big differences between regions. Now, again, the world is urbanizing, and today it's 50% rural, 50% urban, and the proportion of people living in rural areas is expected to decline. But the rural population will continue to grow up until 2020, and in some of the countries in South Central Asia and in Sub-Saharan Africa, the rural population will continue to grow until 2025, and indeed in Sub-Saharan Africa well into the 2040s. So although the proportion of rural population may drop, the actual numbers will increase, particularly in Sub-Saharan Africa. Now further, the total population of rural youth, and by youth we talk about those between the age of 15 and 24 years, they make up about a fifth of the world's population. This is the largest number of youth that has ever been seen in the globe, and is going to continue to grow in South Central Asia and in Sub-Saharan Africa. In Eastern Asia, as you can see from the graphics, Eastern Asia is the dark blue line. You're beginning to start to see a decline. But for Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia, this is going to continue to rise for some considerable time. Now, it's difficult to get accurate rural youth estimates in all regions. These figures are not available, and in our research work, we've tried to get an estimate of numbers. But there's a decline in rural youth in most regions, and the most rapid decline is being seen in Eastern Asia. But we still see in Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia a continued rise in numbers. And for Sub-Saharan Africa, this number will continue to rise well into the 2030s, 35, 40. So in summary, we're going to see very big differences between regions and indeed in different countries of the rural population and of the rural youth. And this requires policies and approaches to youth employment, including employment in small-scale agriculture, which are differentiated by regions. In particular, Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia face very large yearly cohorts of rural youth and youth entering the labour market, and finding decent employment for these youth is going to be a particular challenge, specifically in South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. In East Asia, we face a different set of challenges, particularly in China, and we'll hear more about China in a moment. We see a change in the dependency ratio, that's those who are working against those who are not working, and a decline in rural population. And these numbers themselves are also unprecedented. Now, on youth employment and underemployment, the figures coming out from ILO and others are extremely unhelpful in really trying to understand the nature of utilization of human capital, in particular the very high levels of underutilization in employment. But they do themselves act as a barometer. And globally, youth employment is approximately 3 times larger than that of adult unemployment, although there's regional variations. And again, employment data between rural and urban is largely undifferentiated. But we do know that in rural areas, in particular rural youth, they face greater barriers to access to employment than those in urban areas, not least due to their educational and skills levels. And in general, rural youth tend to be employed, if employed is a word that we could even use, in much more vulnerable occupations, often agriculture, often unpaid family work, whether agriculture or household enterprises. And we also know that young rural women face additional barriers to employment and are often limited to domestic and home working. So an inability to find work, underemployment, and work of drudgery, which is not seen as valued by society, or indeed by other youth peer groups, creates a sense of worthlessness amongst young people, with all the potential negative consequences to those individuals themselves and their families, and also to society at large. So where does agriculture fit within all of this? We have to face the reality that globally, agriculture represents well over 40% of the employment share in many regions in the developing and emerging economy worlds. Sub-Saharan Africa is up to 60%, South Asia, 50%, Eastern Asia, Pacific, over 40%. Even in Eastern Asia, it's just under 40%. Agriculture is a key employer. It may not be the largest proportion of GDP, and indeed often reducingly so, but it's very significant in terms of employment. So in absolute numbers, agriculture will continue to be a major source of employment, and indeed it's expected to increase in some areas, notably in Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. And even in countries in Southeast Asia with strong economic transformation into industrialization, services, etc., youth employment in agriculture remains very high. And you can see from this visual we now have showing that this shows the youth employment in agriculture in the mid-1990s and then around about 2005-06. The dotted line is 1990s, and for each of those countries, Indonesia, the blue line is India, Indonesia, the yellow line, Thailand, the red line. Although there's a reduction, still these levels are very high. And we also note that younger groups in the youth cohort often begin their working life in agriculture, often family-based agriculture. So still, even in Southeast Asia, this employment of youth in agriculture is high. But what's the reality of agriculture employment and livelihood opportunity in agriculture? Now, there's much debate over definitions of size of small-scale agriculture, but whichever way we look at it, the sheer numbers are huge. Well over 500 million small-scale farmers in developing and emerging economies. And that, indeed, I believe it's very much higher than this because the statistics don't capture the very much smaller levels of people involved with agriculture. But the average size in China is round about 0.7 of a hectare. The average size in India is just over 1 hectare. And we're talking here about a very large proportion, 98% in China and some 80% in India are below 2 hectares. So it's a very small size. Not that size is the only factor. Market access, etc., also play a role. But we are dealing with millions of people with very small areas of land. And then even within the small-scale farmer sort of cohorts, there's a lot of diversity. We've got some figures here from Eastern and Southern Africa, the work of Tom Jane. And here we can see that really only approximately 25% of what's described as small-scale farmers have access to around about 2 hectares. Some 25% are below half a hectare. And of those small-scale producers, it's only that top 25% who are really, shall we say, economically and actively engaged in sale of products. Many of the rest are dealing with home production and home consumption. So it raises then the question, in some countries, but in regions, Sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia, how is the agriculture going to become a potential to absorb, a sector to become a potential to absorb the large numbers of youth? And for many, many millions of rural youth, agriculture is in reality the only or the principal option. I just move then to talk a little bit about what the key informants have told us during a study that we've recently undertaken. And that is a series of comments I think are worth quoting. You know, from India and indeed from parts of Africa, to marry a farmer is something families prefer their daughters not to do. And another comment, if all else fails, let us go into farming. It's a sign of failure. And indeed, schools will send children out to work on the school farm when they've misbehaved. It's a very negative attitude that's given to farming and agriculture. As a call to change the mindset of society and policymakers in agriculture. There's a role for education and media to improve the image of agriculture. And we do know, and we hear stories and examples that youth will and do proactively go into agriculture when it offers real business opportunity. And a very important comment made from a number of regions, if youth turn away from agriculture, who indeed will farm, given the farming structure that we have in parts of Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa? And the specific challenges facing rural youth have to be faced if they're going to enter farming. So really, in setting this sort of challenge overall, and I've presented this now as a policy framework, but we could turn it round the other way and say it's a challenge framework. First of all, small-scale farming and youth really needs to be set within a wider economic transformation framework. And we can't assume that for Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia that the development model of industrialization is going to apply, particularly now in a world of open global markets for manufacturing and industry. And it begs the question whether a new model is required in Africa and Asia, of which agriculture plays a central role, at least intergenerationally. And we need to look very much more strategically at how employment, labour market policies, informal sector embrace agriculture as a business, as an enterprise. It also calls for, and this is significantly lacking, is a new debate on small-scale agriculture and farming, and a strategic vision in many of the individual countries that looks today and into the future of how they want the agriculture to be structured. What are the alternative scenarios? And against that vision, to create the interventions that are required. We absolutely have to recognize the heterogeneous nature of small-scale agriculture and stop thinking about small-scale farmers as a single sort of block. And we need to move from agriculture and talking about nutrition and food security and productivity to enterprise, business, and a decent living for many of the rural populations. We need much more financial commitment to agriculture in Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. We've seen in countries like Indonesia and Malaysia very significant investments made over the 50s, 60s and 70s of something like 25%, 30% of GDP. Now we're struggling to get 10% of public expenditure in Sub-Saharan Africa. This is too low. There's much rhetoric about putting youth on the policy agenda, but very little action, and we can learn a little bit more about the entry points for action in a moment. Agribusiness has a key role to play, both in employment, in the new value chains, but also in looking at new models of procurement and enterprise development. And once we've identified a series of constraints for youth in entering agriculture, for example, land and credit, which are particularly challenging for youth, then these need to be addressed. And my last point is that we need to generate much more evidence to monitor changes in small-scale agriculture, including youth, to enable us to know exactly what is happening in rural areas. At the moment, the databases of FAO and ILO are inadequate for us to really know what is happening within that framework. So those are the key points I want to make in a way of introduction, and invite anyone who's interested to have a look at the much more detailed publication, which is available on the HIVOS and IIED website. Thank you very much.
The document you're referring to can also be found outside this room. So for those interested, please take a copy. Now we're after this global presentation, we're moving to China. Talking to Xiaobing Wang. Xiaobing, you are currently working as an associate professor in the Center for Chinese Agriculture Policy. You obtained a PhD from Martin Luther University in Germany, and before joining the Center for Chinese Agriculture Policy, you worked as a research associate in Leibniz Institute of Agriculture Development in Central and Eastern Europe. Your research focuses on the development of labor markets, poverty, productivity analysis in China and other transition countries. And you've published several papers on food policy, China Economics Review, and agriculture economics. So, yeah, also you have contributed to a very nice piece of work, which can also be found outside this room and at the HIVOS and IIED website. Can you hear me? Yeah. Let's put it a bit closer. So, yes, so the idea is that through this discussion, and we're going to explore a bit on what's happening in China, or what has happened in China. I read your document, and well, we all know that China is one of the fastest growing economies in the world, showing a rapid growth in all sectors, but including agriculture, and it has also been very successful in reducing poverty levels. And what I found fascinating is to read is that agriculture growth provided the foundation for successful transformation of China's economy. And that this agriculture economy is dominated by a large group of small-scale producers. I think 200 million small-scale producers. So it's an enormous figure, as Felicity also was highlighting. So could you describe a bit more in detail the role of agriculture and small-scale producers in this transformation of China?
Okay. It's my pleasure to share our research result about China agriculture and rural development. And first, I would like to give some the background about our rural reform. As you may know, China started the household responsibility system in the 1978. And at that time, the land has been distributed equally to the small farmers. That means all the farmers has some piece of land. And as also mentioned, the facilities, the land per household is only about 0.7 hectares. It's considered a very small part of the land. Also, this kind of land also be distributed on the several plots. At that time, also the rural farmers really depend on the agricultural production, because in order to keep their land, they also have to fulfill the quotas. But the situation has been changed a lot. And from the 2002, China started to give the subsidies from the seed subsidy to the farmers. And to the 2004, we also abolished the agriculture tax. That means China really starting to subsidize small farmers. This is concerning. The purpose of the starting of subsidy program is for the food security and also for the poverty alleviation. Another concern is also important is because so far China concerning about evolution of the labor market, many young laborers they looking for the jobs in the urban or suburban areas. Another point I would also like to mention is about, as you may also know, about our hukou system. And under this hukou system, the rural farmers are not equally access to the education or the medical service in the urban cities. That somehow also keeps the farmers stay on the farm. But so far, this has been improved a lot. And so, for the migrant, they are able, for the case of the migrants, they are able to be educated in the cities, and also for our medical system also improved a lot. So farmers has been improved about concerning about social service. Yeah.
Okay, so you're saying that it has been a conscious effort of the Chinese government to work on land reform, to really subsidize agriculture and small-scale agriculture, and you talked about the education system. Can you say a bit more about small-scale farmers in China? Who are they? And do you see similar trends as Felicity has been describing in her presentation?
About the natures of the small-scale farmers, their size is small and they have several plots of land. They are mainly concerning for the agriculture production. But even for the agriculture production itself, it has been changed a lot. Previously, they are mainly for the grain production, but also for so far for the agricultural production has been diversified. There are more moved to the high-valued agricultural products, especially for the coastal area, and there has been starting for the fruit or the vegetables, and even there appear some cluster of husbandry productions, like dairy products, and also for the swine productions. But you can also see there are evolution of labor market in China, and starting at the point of the agricultural reform, the employment of agriculture is about more than 60%. But from that on, after the 30 years of transition, the rural laborers has been the laborers really working on the agriculture has been reduced significantly, and more than so far, especially for the youngs, there are more than 80% of them has been working on farm, and in many of the small-scale farms, there are some the young laborers, they don't working any single days on the farm. They would like to working out the farm, even in the cities or even in the local areas, after combining with our reform in the education and other social services. Yeah.
I think it's working again. Yeah. So what you're observing is that small-scale agriculture in China is being characterized by an increasing age population, and young people not even working a single day on the farm. Is that bad?
To someone's concerns about the aging is really a question of a Chinese agriculture, because so far we need to adopt new technologies. We starting let's go back to the subsidy. So far for the subsidy program, we don't even for the grain subsidy or the input subsidy. We also give the subsidy on the mechanical machine for the machines. That means who can run this kind of machines? You have to be high educated, or you have to attending some vocational trainings. Then you are able to run the machines. So the government, in order to improve about the technology, is starting to give the subsidy for the mechanical operation. You can, if you buy the big machines, then you can get the subsidy from government to cover about more than 30% of expenses. And for this part, and also concerning, we also try to improve about our agriculture technology extension system. That means to introduce a new technology to the agriculture production, and who are able to learn about this one, it should be the high education or get some training on this kind of technology. So we think about aging is problem. That's why we want to make the attractive of the agriculture. China starting to give the subsidy, and another part, we also make some great investment in the agriculture concerning about infrastructure, and also improve about irrigation system, etc.
Okay, so you're saying that agriculture needs to innovate, and for innovation you need youth.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you also mentioned that youth are turning their back to agriculture. So how can agriculture be made more attractive for youth? And what are business models that can work and can really inspire them to become active in the agriculture sector?
Yeah, that's a very good question. For this part, we concern is about our land market. Because in China, land is not allowed to sell, so and also farmers would like, all the farmers are still rely on the land for concern about income and also welfare. So for this part, we think the land reform should be improved for the land rental market. And in order to get more benefit from agriculture, the farmer need to extend their land. Then for those who are able and willing to work on farm, they can extend the size of the farm, so they can more benefit from the skill effect.
Okay, and in many areas, regions, cooperatives are being pushed as a way to promote or improve agriculture. How do you see the role of cooperatives in China?
For this, as been experienced from the developed countries, I think the cooperative is functioning very well in the supply about service and also for the marketing. And also our China government also try to set up of our cooperative system, but actually it doesn't function so well so far. But so that means in order to attract the farmers to the agriculture production, they have to improve about their cooperative system to consider to supply their about the credit and also for the supply of some input and fertilizer and seeds and technologies for this kind of service, and also try to marketing their products, especially for targeted to the supermarket and etc.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Very interesting.